Welcome, everybody, to Dead Talk Live. I am your host, Viz, and tonight we have a very special guest, Hannah Emily Anderson, who has appeared in such films as Jigsaw, X-Men, Dark Phoenix, and is in the upcoming movie called Dark Nature, which just made its premiere at Fantasia Film Festival just a few weeks ago. Hannah, thank you so much for being here. How you doing tonight?
Thank you for having me. I'm actually just catching my breath because I just came back from the beach and shoved a bunch of pasta in my face and then ran upstairs to get ready. So I'm just like digesting my pasta right now.
Well, it sounds like you had a fun day.
It was a good
Again,
day.
thank you so much for being here, and let's just get right to it.
Yeah.
Like I said, you're in an upcoming movie coming out later this year. It just made its premiere at Fantasia called Dark Nature. You play the character of Joy. Now, Joy suffered through a traumatic experience that we see early on in the film at the hands of her husband. What were your thoughts as you read through this character and what she's about?
Whew. I think it was more of a feeling like I had an emotional response to it right away.
Mhm.
And that's always a sign that something I'm going to work on is going to be worthwhile if I have that feeling. My thoughts were I need to learn a lot more about domestic abuse. And I felt like I was going on the emotional journey with her while I was reading the
Wow.
script. Like I was sort of on the highs and the lows, and that was one of the main things that attracted me to it was the exploration of that trauma and her story and not shying away from, like that opening scene is so intense, like not shying away from actually showing what domestic abuse how it can manifest.
Now, if you look back to your prior roles, would you say this was something you've never done before, and was it a challenge for you?
Yeah, it was. I'm laughing because it was the hardest thing I've ever done in
Wow.
my career. Yeah, I don't think I have played characters who have been in traumatic situations like The Purge and um, I guess What Keeps You Alive. I was on the other side of that.
We're going to get to that in a bit.
Okay. But this felt a lot more vulnerable in many ways and like showcasing
Yeah,
the abuse and the PTSD and the flashbacks and how that comes out physically and emotionally. And
absolutely.
putting yourself in that kind of a state is very difficult and vulnerable. And not only that, but working against the elements. Like we shot in the true wilderness, and it was stunning. Like it was so gorgeous to go work there every day, but it just felt like Mother Nature did not want us to be there from day one. Things kept malfunctioning, and like for example, during the we had 3 days of water stunts, and it was freezing. Like it was so cold, and the first day I got out of the water and I was like shivering and I went to go into the warm up tent and as I was reaching for it, it just blew away.
Oh my God.
It's like things like that kept happening. And we
But
just had to troubleshoot and figure it out as we went.
But you're right. The scenery, the location of this film, it's beautiful, but it also adds to the eeriness. This is a horror movie for
Yeah.
everybody out there. It is a horror movie. Now, Joy reluctantly goes on this therapeutic nature trip on the behest of her best friend. And of course, things start to go sideways. At that point, when Joy leaves for the trip, would you categorize her as somebody who is just living just to make it to the next minute?
Absolutely. I think she's in a state of shock, really, when we, that first day, when we see her about to leave for this trip. I think she's in denial and she's in shock and she's in survival mode and she's just kind of going through the motions, but is completely broken.
Lost. Yeah,
Yeah, lost and broken.
absolutely. as we've been talking about, there's a lot of social commentary in this film, in particular about victims of domestic abuse, them returning to their abusive situations, and the different routes that can take. Do you like how the writer took that aspect and put it into a whole horror setting?
Yeah, yeah. I think horror kind of allows you to explore certain like really heavy topics in kind of a safe way because it's in the horror zone. It's like
Hmm.
somehow easier to talk about. Like it's not um they don't it doesn't you don't they don't talk down to their audience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, this is a pretty much all female cast.
Yeah.
As was it? Well, first of all, how was that? I mean, it's about female. It's about women who've gone through trauma, led by a woman doctor who are empowering each other. I mean, what did you feel about that scenario?
I loved that part of it. It's very rare to work with mostly women, so that was I felt like we were good at empowering each other and sort of standing up for each other, and it felt like we were going through something like together, like as a community, as a group.
Yeah,
And especially with Madison Walsh, who
yeah.
plays Carmen, like she was my right hand man. Like she was always there by my side, and I don't think I would have been able to do it without her because she just kept me laughing. She's hilarious. So I really loved working with her. Like in between those intense scenes, we would just burst out
It
laughing.
sounds that way with all the problems you guys were having on set. It was good to have somebody there that made you laugh. Now, as each character is going through their own PTSD, as the events in the wilderness start to unfold, it seems like everybody starts to put their trauma on what's going on. Joy thinks it's her ex husband. The other characters think it's their own trauma following them. What did you think about that aspect of the film and how it relates to PTSD and how people feel that it's always following you around?
Hmm. I think it speaks to how your world view kind of you see it through the lens of your own you see the world through the lens of your own trauma, and you
Exactly.
see that very clearly with each character.
What's really great about Dark Nature is the suspense aspect to it. As the movie is going on, you don't know if this is a paranormal horror movie. You don't know if it's a creature horror movie. We're not going to spoil anything, but it's just that not knowing that really keeps the viewers at the edge on the edge of their seats. As you were playing the character of Joy, uh, is I mean, what did you bring to the table to sort of heighten that feeling of suspense and anticipation as to what is lurking in the woods?
How did I bring? Well, the great thing about filming in actual nature, like we were filming literally in the dark woods, in the
Yeah,
dark nature. Um, so I was able to play off my surroundings. So, for example, like if I'm in the dark woods at night and you're supposed to hear something, like it becomes a lot easier to take on the fear of actually being in the woods at night. You can't see where you're going and it's dark and it's scary. And so I sort of tried to take that feeling of what would it feel like to be alone,
yeah,
um, in the middle of nowhere.
absolutely. And it's terrifying. I'm a city guy. I'm a city boy,
Oh
and
yeah.
you put me in the woods, and I am just completely
You're
lost.
lost.
So,
You would have died
yeah,
in
I
this
would
film, I
have.
bet.
I
Yeah.
would have. Yeah, I'm not the camping type of person. You mentioned earlier what I would say is my favorite role of yours, and that is what keeps you alive.
Hmm.
You play Jackie, a bona fide psychopath. So, were you excited, first off, just to take on that role? Was that also something that you've never played before?
Oh, of Jackie?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember. reading the script and I was so excited about it. Like I kept flipping the page and I just could not get enough of it. And it was everything that I'd ever wanted to play. Like I had always wanted to play a part like that. I didn't want to get stuck in the kind of ingenue
Yeah.
sort of role. So it was like, yeah, everything I everything I wanted. And you get to play when you're a psychopath, you get to play so many different aspects of yourself, which is really
Ex-
fascinating and fun.
it is. It's sort of your acting within acting. And how do you put yourself in the shoes of somebody who is just void of any kind of emotions?
Well, I think the fascinating thing about psychopaths is that they learn how to mimic emotion.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they aren't really, I mean, I'm not a I'm not a psychotherapist, but I'm not an expert by any means, but they're not really connected to, they don't have empathy the way that we do.
Yeah.
And so I tried to think about what would it feel like if the social norms that we're used to putting on every day, you know, the mask of like, hi, nice to meet you, and having to smile and be polite, like what would it look like and feel like to take those away?
Yep.
So if I didn't need to be polite, then maybe I would just my face would be relaxed when I talk to someone, and my face, like the whole feeling and my face would change just because of without those social norms. It was just trying to take those away.
And for people who haven't seen it, What Keeps You Alive is available on AMC Plus and Shutter. I highly recommend you guys check it out if you have not watched it yet. One of my favorite scenes is when your character Jackie is prepping herself for what she believes the police are going to show up, prepping her emotions. How is she going to act? And a few movies have done that in the past. I remember one with Matt Dillon in a movie called The House That Jack Built, and he does the same thing that you did in What Keeps You Alive.
Mm.
So you're out there, and the director yells action, and you're calm. You even mention it in the movie that your heart rate never elevates, okay? And that's like a sign of a psychopath. And you're practicing these emotions, sort of like acting within acting. Was that weird for you to do?
It was. I don't think I hadn't done anything like that, but it was almost like letting the audience into my prep,
Mm-hmm.
like the way that Jackie would prepare to do her scene is similar to how I would prepare to do
Yeah.
my scene, maybe, you know, where you're kind of working yourself up and trying to get yourself to this emotional place. So I kind of just tried to think of it as I'm an actor, like Jackie's an actor right now.
Yeah, and that's I love that aspect of it. Now, your co-star in the movie is Brittany Allen, who plays your wife Jules.
Mhm.
Uh, you guys had amazing chemistry. A lot of years have passed, so we can give spoilers out on this one. Uh, you guys have great chemistry when you go up to this family cabin of yours. Before you reveal the true nature of what you are and who you are, and then the chemistry shift afterwards. What was it like working with Brittany on the very intense scenes that you guys had together?
It was amazing. It was amazing. We had, I think, a very natural chemistry, and she is one of the best acting partners I've ever had. She is so in it with you,
Mm-hmm.
and she goes so far, which made me feel like I could go as far as I wanted. And we had this sort of healthy competition between us where she would do a scene and I'd watch it and be like, oh man, that was so good. Like she just gave it her all. And then then it'd be my turn. Then I would have to, you know,
Bring it
I kept
all.
trying to match Brit. And she would, yeah, I would love to work with her again. She's amazing.
Before we go, you have done a fair amount of independent film, but you've also been in some pretty big studio films as well. One of the very famous Saw franchise, where you had a big role in 2017's Jigsaw. So what were your feelings in joining the Saw franchise?
That was pretty surreal. Um, as many projects of mine are, it was fairly last minute. So it was all kind of a whirlwind of getting used to it. We were maybe a week or two out, and we were trying to still figure out the look of the character, and they bleached my entire head one day, and then I went back to red the next day, and then suddenly I'm sitting in the makeup chair, and Tobin Bell is next to me, and I'm kind of going like, what? Like, how did I get here? So it kind of felt like a weird dream, but yeah, mostly surreal. Pretty incredible experience.
And then you were also in X-Men as well, another huge franchise, part of the Marvel universe. I mean, explain to us as an actor, going from independent films to these big studio films, is there really something that stands out, a big difference besides the obvious, the money? The
I was gonna
money.
say.
Yeah, the money, the sets, the hundreds of people as opposed to working with only people needed on the set. What's the feeling like when you go from an independent set to a big studio set?
It's terrifying. It's like I felt so out of my league. I'm used to like a very small budget, like small amount of people, and it's like a whole universe. Like you step onto the set and they have created a whole other world, and it's a massive scale, and there's multiple sets and way more people. The job itself, when you distill it down, is the same,
Yeah,
but it becomes almost harder because you have to sort of block out everything else
and everybody that's looking at
around you.
you.
Yeah, it felt like um it's such a massive scale. It's hard to understand until you are there seeing it for yourself.
Oh, that's great. And I want to thank you so much for coming on here and just sharing some of your stories. Guys, again, the movie is coming out later this year. I don't think there's an official release date yet.
Yeah.
It just premiered at Fantasia. It's called Dark Nature. Check it out. It's a great movie. We're not going to tell you what kind of a horror movie it is. You're just going to have to go and find out. Hannah, again, thank you so much. Do you have any final thoughts you want to share before we go?
No, I don't think so, but thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. It was our pleasure. I want to thank our audience, those who have tuned in live, and those who will be watching this later on. On behalf of Hannah and myself, stay safe, stay walking. Good night, everybody.